Guillain-Barré syndrome is an acute, immune-mediated polyneuropathy that affects the peripheral nervous system, and it is actually one of the most common causes of acute acquired paralysis in adults. What's important to understand from the start is that the onset is acute, meaning symptoms develop relatively quickly, usually over days. Classically, patients develop a symmetrical, ascending weakness, which typically starts in the feet and then progresses upwards through the legs and into the upper limbs. However, Guillain-Barré syndrome doesn't only affect motor nerves. It can also involve sensory nerves, cranial nerves, and, importantly, the autonomic nervous system, which explains many of its complications. In most cases, Guillain-Barré syndrome is triggered by an infection, and this infection usually occurs 1 to 4 weeks before the onset of neurological symptoms. The infection most strongly associated with Guillain-Barré syndrome is gastroenteritis caused by Campylobacter jejuni. However, respiratory infections, particularly cytomegalovirus and Epstein-Barr virus, are also well-recognized triggers. So, what's actually going on at the immune level? The key underlying mechanism is something called molecular mimicry. Following an infection, the immune system responds against the pathogen by recruiting B cells and producing antibodies directed against antigens on that organism. However, and this is the critical point, some of these antibodies can cross-react with structurally similar components of peripheral nerves. In many cases, these targets are gangliosides, which are important components of nerve cell membranes. Depending on which structures are targeted, the antibodies may damage the myelin sheath, leading to demyelination, or the axon itself, leading to axonal injury. Either way, this immune-mediated nerve damage disrupts normal electrical conduction, and this is what ultimately produces the weakness and sensory symptoms seen clinically. Guillain-Barré syndrome is not a single uniform disease, but rather a group of related conditions that share a similar immune-mediated mechanism. The most common subtype is acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, or AIDP. Axonal variants also exist, including AMAN, which affects motor axons, and AMSAN, which affects both motor and sensory axons and is often more severe. So how does Guillain-Barré syndrome actually present clinically? Well, in most patients, the first thing you notice is a progressive symmetrical weakness. Now, because this is a peripheral neuropathy, muscle stretch reflexes are typically reduced or absent. That happens because nerve conduction is impaired, which disrupts the reflex arc. However, and this is important to keep in mind, reflexes can sometimes be preserved or even brisk, particularly in some axonal variants of the disease. Alongside weakness, patients often experience sensory symptoms such as tingling or numbness in the hands and feet. Neuropathic pain is also quite common, although interestingly, objective sensory loss is usually mild on examination. As the disease progresses, cranial nerve involvement may occur, most commonly presenting as bilateral facial nerve weakness. In more severe cases, the weakness can extend further to involve the bulbar and respiratory muscles, which can ultimately lead to respiratory failure. Another key feature, and one that is particularly important, is autonomic dysfunction. This can cause heart rate abnormalities such as tachycardia or bradycardia, blood pressure instability, gastrointestinal dysmotility, and urinary retention. In severe cases, autonomic involvement can even result in life-threatening arrhythmias or sudden death. In terms of progression, symptoms typically worsen over 2 to 4 weeks, with most patients reaching their nadir, meaning the point of maximum weakness, within 4 weeks. After that, there is a gradual recovery phase, which may last months or even years, depending on how much nerve damage has occurred. If, however, symptoms continue to worsen beyond 8 weeks, Guillain-Barré syndrome becomes less likely, and an alternative diagnosis, such as chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, should be considered. The diagnosis of Guillain-Barré syndrome is made primarily on clinical grounds, as there is no single test that definitively confirms the diagnosis. In this setting, nerve conduction studies are useful because they help distinguish demyelinating from axonal forms, although they may be normal early in the disease, particularly within the first week. A lumbar puncture typically shows elevated cerebrospinal fluid protein with a normal white cell count and normal glucose, a finding known as albuminocytologic dissociation. This occurs because inflammation leads to breakdown of the blood-nerve barrier, allowing plasma proteins to enter the CSF without an increase in inflammatory cells. Importantly, CSF protein may still be normal early on, and this does not exclude Guillain-Barré syndrome. Management of Guillain-Barré syndrome requires urgent treatment, alongside careful supportive care. Disease-modifying therapy consists of intravenous immunoglobulin, or plasma exchange, and both treatments are equally effective. Supportive care is essential and focuses on close respiratory monitoring, early recognition of autonomic instability, and venous thromboembolism prophylaxis, as pulmonary embolism is a significant cause of death. In severe cases, particularly when respiratory muscle weakness develops, patients require intubation, mechanical ventilation, and admission to intensive care. Overall, the prognosis of Guillain-Barré syndrome is generally favorable. Approximately 80% of patients recover fully, around 15% have residual neurological deficits, and about 5% die, most commonly due to respiratory or autonomic complications. Here we wrap things up. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, feel free to leave a like or a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.